everyone, dietitian Libby Parker here, and today I am so excited to bring you a wonderful guest expert, Dalia Kinsey. She is a registered dietitian with a school district in Georgia, and she's going to be talking to us about some common myths with the K through 12 school lunch program. Stay tuned to find out more. Hey everyone, I'm registered dietitian Libby Parker, and today I'm talking with registered dietitian Dalia Kinsey, who is going to be talking to us about the school nutrition program. And she and I are going to have a candid talk about what we didn't learn in our dietitian program and some things that RDs to be should be aware of. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, I have Dalia Kinsey here with me today. She is a registered dietitian who works with school nutrition, and I'm so excited to have you on, Dalia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about some myths in school nutrition and how schools can make a more inclusive lunchroom environment and nutrition education in especially K through 12, which is Dalia's expertise. So first, I'd love to ask Dalia to just tell us a little more about her background in school nutrition, what she's been doing, what she's currently doing.
So I've been working in school nutrition for I'm going on 3 years now. I came from public health and I wanted to transition because during my internship, I was really drawn to how many different areas of dietetic training apply in school nutrition. So like right now, I get to do allergy management and special diets. So that means kids that have cerebral palsy or who have dietary restrictions related to texture or swallowing difficulties. All of that comes across my desk. But at the same time, I'm also dealing with the general healthy population and focusing on disease prevention. So it uses so much of my training as a dietitian. I was drawn to it immediately. And then there's a lot of fun nutrition ed as well, which nutrition ed was my favorite part of being in public health, was doing outreach events and, food related story time, focusing on all the things that you want people to do in a positive light instead of in some areas of dietetics, people are still really focused on restriction and giving people a list of don'ts, which I'm not into. It's not evidence based. And so I knew school nutrition was going to be a better fit for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the only way you see that much variety is to probably work in a hospital or a doctor's office. So that's awesome. You get to apply so many different skill sets in your job.
Absolutely. And then too, it makes me feel like I am getting in at a level where people have time to make changes that could totally change their health outcomes. So even if you have some kind of disease that's going to progress over your life cycle, whatever changes you make 30 years down the road won't have the impact that changes you make now in elementary school will. So it's nice to get to see the variety. And I find inborn errors of metabolism fascinating. So I'm always excited to see those. And it's nice to be available to the parents at no cost to them when they need more help or more support as they're trying to implement whatever dietary changes they were given by their specialist. Or a lot of them are seeing dietitians off-site because you really do need a lot of support. Like if you get what's a good example? Like if you have PKU, you're going to probably need help with shopping. And I mean, PKU is a beast. That's probably not a good example.
Basically, onset diabetes.
Yes, that's a better one. So for parents like that, I can be available for real life advice. So a lot of times when you go to the doctor's office and you get your new diagnosis and you see a dietitian for like 1 hour, they can give you like the broad overview of what you should be doing and they give you resources. And then you're probably on your own, depending on what kind of health insurance you have. And then beyond that, you may need to go out of pocket for extra help. So what's awesome about the National School Lunch Program, the government here in the United States subsidizes that program. And we are legally obligated to be evidence-based. So that protects the parents and the children on a lot of levels.
Hmm.
So, two, as a resource to them, we're available for more nutrition education, more support, more real life. This is how you're going to purchase things and work with whatever your income situation is. So, a lot of people that have free access to healthcare, I mean, like liberal access, not
Yeah.
free,
Yeah.
are higher income people. And of course, things like early onset diabetes don't care what your income
Hmm.
status is. So there are a lot of people who don't get to go to the doctor or to the dietitian whenever they want,
Yeah.
who are trying to manage chronic illness as well. And something I personally believe in is that everyone should be given a fair shot to live their best life. And I
Amen.
feel like, yeah, I get a chance to help kids do just that, whether it's making sure they're well fed enough to have access to the academic resources that are there at school. But if you're hungry, of course, it's difficult to
Hmm.
learn, if not impossible, or whether it's giving people the information they need early on to avoid all of the possible consequences of poorly managing diabetes over a long period of time.
Yeah. Wow. You're doing so much. It's overwhelming to hear. It's like trying to remember back to, my 2-week internship rotation with school food service. And like, it didn't sound nearly as interesting as what you're describing right now. Cause it's like, okay, let's order the food and let's walk through the kitchen and see how they're batch cooking. And so this is what real school dietitians do, people.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I try as much as possible to focus on my RD stuff. I will say I frequently get sucked into stuff that I'm like, is this really something I should be doing?
Yeah.
But you try and be a team player with it being a government job, like so many other things. We're not always as well staffed as we would like to be. And the benefits may be great, but a lot of people, especially when it comes to people who went to college, this isn't glamorous enough for most people to be interested. And there really is. We see this across the board. There's kind of a focus on all things collegiate and all things just a little more. We just have an issue in this country with respecting working class
Yeah.
and acknowledging that being college educated does not mean you're not working class. If you have to go to work every day to keep your house and your vehicle, in my opinion, you're working
Just
class.
working class.
But we've made up this division between the office workers and the blue collar workers. And a lot of people have a lot of hangups about being mistaken for being blue collar. So I even notice it when I go out
Yeah.
to the schools sometimes, the way people will address me when I'm there, like subbing as a cashier because a bunch of people are out sick, versus how they will address me when I'm walking to a board meeting and I have a suit on. It's completely different. I
Mhm.
think that kind of focus on hierarchy is disgusting. I'm not into it. I'm more into treating everyone equally and valuing people for their unique characteristics and their unique roles and however they contribute to the organization that we're in, the community that we're in, the city we're in, the country we're in. Everybody has something they can teach you and everybody has value. Like my those are fundamental
Yeah.
beliefs for me. Yeah. So I don't understand condescending to someone who works on the janitorial staff. You don't know anything
Yeah.
about them. You see what they are doing for work during the day.
It's
I
an
mean, and
honest job.
exactly. Like if it's an honest job, like I don't understand why we're so hung up on hierarchy sometimes.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say we have trouble keeping all of our positions filled. People carry on and on about unemployment rates, but then there are positions out there all over the country that people cannot keep filled. So,
Yeah. Well, just to wrap up this conversation, I worked for the county before as well, and I liked the job. Like it was really fun, and I got to go do education and present. And yeah, there was the very unglamorous parts like washing the blender pieces and stuff like that. But I mean, the pay was a lot lower than other jobs I've had as a dietitian. And I think
mm,
that, probably very similar to the school system because it's also government. Like, I'm sure the pay is not as great as you would like. And after you've been doing it for a few years, you can move into a job that pays better as well. So,
I
maybe
would
it's
say
nice, but
for dietetics though, I would say, and maybe it depends on what part of the country you're in.
yeah,
But when I went from public health to school nutrition, my salary almost doubled.
that I
And
believe.
I know, well, yeah, I know, right? That wasn't hard. But then there are people who, well, I'll say this. In undergrad, they said on the top end for the average dietitian, not talking about people in private practice
Mhm.
who have gone beyond working for someone else.
Yeah.
They said people were kind of tapping out at 80,
Mhm.
and the people who are making six figures and beyond were self-employed, and that took a skill set that was not just gained through school.
Yeah.
They went above and beyond. So a person who can be successful in private practice probably could have been successful as an entrepreneur in a lot of different areas. Like they were destined to make over six figures, and it looked like the median dietitians were like in the 50s. Even people who have their
Mhm.
masters, who are handling complicated cases with tube
Yeah.
feedings, and easily in food service, you're in the high 60s, you're in the low 70s.
Yeah.
It's, to
Yeah, food service
start
actually pays
out.
well, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy with it. And then I still have time to work on my other projects. So that's exciting. And then, you can control how much you're going to earn. So you can get into six and beyond.
Yeah. I'm destined to be a 6+ figure earner. We
Yeah.
haven't been there yet. So far, school has lied to me.
Maybe it's coming. That's another thing they never talk about is how long does it take? They
Yeah.
never tell you.
They were telling us that we'd be making like 60 grand out of the box, and
Lies.
I have never seen that to this day. It's like
I've seen other majors do it all the
yeah.
time. But honestly, I don't know. Well, you know what? I heard that Davita pays around
Okay.
60 out right out the gate, I think.
I don't know.
And maybe it depends on demand
Yeah.
in the area.
Okay. Well, we could talk salaries all day, but I want to get into some more questions because most of my viewers are not dietitians. So I want to get into more relevant stuff. We
Gotcha.
should just do a dietitian channel, like just chatting about jobs because this is really fun.
I would love to give, yeah, the young RDs and the students the truth because, like, I didn't know what the earning situation was going to be like until I was in it. But nobody wants to give you any numbers. I remember we had one
Yeah.
lady come in. Oh my God, it breaks my heart to even think about this. And this is off topic. He may have to cut all this out. But this lady had such a special niche. She was a former professional dancer, like a ballerina,
Mhm.
and an RD. And she was working with different studios trying to prevent disordered eating and trying to give the dancers evidence-based nutrition
Is this
interventions.
Emily Cook Harrison?
I don't know. Does
She's
she have like
she's
two
in
kids?
she's
She had
in
two kids.
Georgia. Yeah, I think so.
Maybe so. Okay. Well, I don't
She's
remember who
amazing.
asked
But
her because
anyway.
it's so rude. I don't remember which one of us was rude enough to ask her. But we wanted to know, like, well, how much money do you make? Because this is such a unique skill set. Like,
Yeah.
you must be swimming like
Yeah.
Scrooge style through your gold coins every night. And she gave such a ridiculous number. Since that may be her name, I won't even say how much, but it
Okay.
was crazy. I was like, I was just horrified. It was something you could have made putting the carts away at Walmart because I know they make like $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, well, it's my passion, so it doesn't matter." And I was like, "Oh my God,
You
God
still got to
help
pay the
me."
bills. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, get me out of this major. Somebody get me out of here.
I know it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we might just make this into two different videos. But I remember, yeah, when we were learning how much like that range of like dietitians will, probably make 30 to 80,000 as like a lifetime career brackets, unless you're really in some like specialty thing way over here, outlier. Um, if I had known that when I was first signing up, I would have done something totally different.
Absolutely. Well, it's like they
Pay your
this are
dietitian.
exactly. Well, and then when I accepted insurance for like half a second, I was like, "Holy moly, this is even worse." I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
end up making like $2 an hour.
Yep.
Like there's just no way. And so I want to be able to help a large amount of people. That's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in school nutrition, because I feel like my impact can be large and I'm getting a wage that I feel like I deserve. Cause it's not like I'm not digging ditches or anything. It's not
Mhm.
back-breaking work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's things that I really enjoy. Like I'm
Yeah.
even over social media management. So like how hard is that? And I enjoy it. So if I'm going to get paid to interview people and make videos and make memes and stuff, I mean,
That's fun.
that's right up my alley. So I'm
Yeah.
all for it. But if I would have known, I would not have made it to this point. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise
Yeah,
that
maybe
I
that's
didn't
why they
know.
don't tell us so that someone will actually take these jobs.
I know. Yes, yes. How would WIC get any employees if it wasn't for nutrition majors waiting until the end of their degree to realize how hard it's going to be to get placed in an internship?
Mhm.
That everyone's trying to push you. Well, it is going to be mandatory, but before it was mandatory, you almost had to do the master's program for your bachelor's to be useful
Yeah.
because there are no spots for internships. So, plenty of spots in the master's programs.
Mhm.
So, yeah, sham.
Well, and I will say, as hard as it probably is to keep people in WIC, I currently have a foster kid, and WIC is amazing. Like being on the consumer side of it after
Mm.
having worked in WIC, oh my gosh, WIC is so incredible.
Did you
I
find a clinic that you like?
Yeah, and the nice thing is because this is the town that I did my internship in, a lot of my preceptors are now my dietitians.
Oh,
Um,
see,
so
that's
it's
awesome.
it's really cool. So we get to talk, and they don't have to do the education with me, which is kind of nice. I
Yeah.
always get back
Oh,
like, you taught this before, you're good. Um, and I worked in the public health department that was attached, so like I was in that world, even though I wasn't necessarily doing like the WIC consults as a job.
yeah.
So it's kind of nice. I can just kind of go in and, do the weights and everything and get, the WIC checks. But man, that is such a good government assistant program.
It really is. And it used to make me so sad that people would not come in
Yeah.
until they wanted the formula. A lot of people, didn't come in for the breastfeeding support,
Mhm.
didn't come in for the prenatal food, people who weren't really eating.
Yeah. Oh my
Just
gosh.
wait
It's
for the
amazing.
formula. Yeah, some people are too proud, and you probably saw people would ball up their little folder because you
Hmm.
could tell when they got to the store they were embarrassed, and they tried to like stuff it in
Hmm.
their bag. So it's interesting. There's so many things that I feel like in the United States we don't respect, and I know this is not unique to us.
Yeah.
This is just where we live, but that are related to shame and elitism, and then you find like the whole country will hear this negative message about a program that's actually doing great things is extremely useful because
Hmm.
WIC has a lot of numbers to back up their existence.
Yeah.
They literally have saved lives and changed lives by making sure people have adequate nutrition
Hmm.
during the most vulnerable part of their life. But to hear people tell it, oh, it's like you get abused when you go to the clinic, and they want to make people out to be mooches that are on the program. There are a lot of people on WIC who will use it briefly and it will help them get to where they need to be nutritionally, and they'll never be back. Or you're a person who has some sort of genetic inborn error of metabolism, and your parents could have been loaded and there's no way to feed you without this supplement.
Yeah.
We would have people all the time that were very high income, like maybe between two parents, you're making $250,000 a year. And then you have a child who needs all this special formula, and it costs you like $10,000 a month, and they're growing and it goes
Yeah.
up and up and up from there. No one can pay for that.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why the program exists. And I never hear people talk about that part of it. They just
Mhm.
kind of demonize people who are getting help that they need.
Yeah. And it's definitely been interesting. Yeah, we're getting into different topics, but this is good. I want to keep rolling with it. Like this morning, I was at Target using our WIC checks, and we don't technically qualify as low income. We just have a foster kid, so she qualifies. So it's also like if people want to stare at that, I want to almost say like it's not always what you think it is. Like
Right.
I could afford to buy this food. I'm really glad I don't have to,
Yeah.
because we are opening up our home to this child, and we don't know if, number one, we get to keep her. We're hoping we get to adopt her, but we don't know. So we're like glorified babysitters for a while.
Right.
It's a Formula is extremely expensive, and I don't produce breast milk because I didn't birth her, and that's fine by me.
Yeah.
And it's so nice to have like to know that that is something that we don't have to worry about, so that we can use the money
Mhm.
for other things for her. So
Right.
all these services are just so great.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to roll right into K through 12 nutrition, since that's your specialty. And I mean, there's so many different topics that we could get into this. And something that I really love that you do is that you are very health at every size oriented, and you try to make the school nutrition education extremely inclusive, and like it's a social justice issue for you, which is so cool. So I want to get into some of that, but I know a lot of the listeners, especially if you're parents, I hear from a lot of people that they think that school lunches, the school food service is not healthy, and that it'd be healthier if they brought their own food, or, how basically how healthy is it really? And
Right.
I'd love for you to debunk some of the common myths around school food service.
So I would say probably most parents, they're probably like our age and a little younger.
Hmm.
They are thinking of what school lunches were like in the 80s and 90s.
Hmm.
And even then, I would say they
Tasty.
had a lot of value. Exactly. Because you have to think well, not everybody knows this, but
Yeah.
the National School Lunch Program started around the Depression era because it was becoming evident that not making sure school age children were eating was actually a national security issue. And people who don't receive adequate nutrition when they're younger are going to suffer poor health outcomes. And these are people who we're going to be looking to defend our nation down the road and to do all the great things we need, active citizens to
Yeah.
do. So from the beginning, the program started because there was an issue with undernutrition. And we wanted to make sure that all Americans had access to food during this vulnerable time in their lives. So it started out simple, like just some milk, and it's grown from there. And the program continues to evolve. So when I was a kid, I know that they were more focused on specific nutrients, like, oh, are you serving the kids enough D? Are you serving them enough C? Well, since the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act came out around, I want to say 2013,
Yeah.
that's like an Obama era change.
Yeah.
And everybody remembers Michelle Obama was very focused on health. And I'm not over the moon about her focus on obesity,
Yeah.
but whatever. People do the best they can with what they know. And so the whole anti-Hayes approach aside, she really focused on whole foods. So
Yes.
instead of telling people, let's focus on individual nutrients, because back in our day, or this actually is probably before your day, but when I was a kid, I know there was a window there where ketchup was a vegetable for like half a second. And that was because of the focus on individual nutrients,
Mhm.
not it being a whole food. Ketchup is no longer a vegetable in the National
Good.
School Lunch Program, and it hasn't been since I've been an adult, and I'm like a senior millennial, like an Oregon
Yeah.
Trail millennial.
Yes.
So
Me too.
yeah. So now the rules are that you have to represent all the food groups and what you offer the kids. So if you go into any cafeteria across the nation, if they are receiving funding from the US government, like most public school programs are,
Mhm.
you're going to see everyone's offered fruit, vegetables, um, a grain, some kind of meat alternate. And the meat alternate isn't necessarily an animal product. It could be beans, it could be cheese. So more and more we see the program becoming more inclusive from a cultural food perspective as well. Because I know in the 80s that tofu as a meat alternate
Would not have
wasn't a
flown.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the WIC program, they've started to include, I mean, things move slowly. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a government program. Like, what do we want, people?
Takes
But
2 years to move a paper across the desk. Yeah.
yes, and they have to like prove every change before they make the change. Like
Hmm.
the amount of research they have to do before they change the food package and WIC is bananas. Like 10 years of research, and they're like, okay, you can put another dollar over here. But at least once that decision's been made, you know it was
There's
based
been a
on
lot of
a
research.
lot of research. And so even the food pattern that we have right now, it's based on the US dietary guidelines for Americans. And I know if you're really, really, really health oriented, or if you've modified your diet for ethical or environmental reasons, you are not on the standard American diet.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. Most
Most people
Americans
are,
are not exactly, they're not even meeting the US dietary guidelines, like not even close.
which
The
is why
whole
they're not
make
like
half your plate fruits and vegetables, very,
no
very,
one's doing
very few people are doing that. So if you compare what most people are going to put in a lunchbox to what we give them, our meals are always going to be a better bet. And it's so interesting to me. I'll see parents, they will send a kid with a box full of packaged food that has health claims on it,
that. Hmm.
that says it's organic or says it's gluten free or says, whatever.
Hmm.
And this isn't for a kid with celiac disease. This
Yeah.
is a kid whose parent heard somewhere that gluten free was the way to go.
Yeah.
So they're sending them with all these prepackaged foods, thinking that they're sending them with something better than what we can offer them. the the thing that I feel like a lot of people don't know is how much training it takes to keep and maintain a job in the kitchen.
Hmm.
So if you work at the district level like I do, you have a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and most people these days have beyond. If you're
Hmm.
a director of a program, in my state, for example, not only do you have to have a master's degree, depending on the size of your district. So if you don't live like way, way out in the boonies,
Yeah.
because I'm living in middle Georgia. It's not a huge city. Our school system has like 40 schools, which is like kind of medium sized, but there are places in Florida that have like 200 plus schools in a district,
Wow.
But so we're kind of, we're not tiny, but we're not huge. Well, that's big enough. You have to have a master's to lead our program.
Hmm.
So, and you have to have a lot of hours of concentration in public health and in nutrition. Of course, you need to know how to manage the bottom line and all that. But even if you work in the kitchen, you have to do continuing ed work all year. So you know about food safety, you know about so many topics that people would assume you don't,
Hmm.
right? So we have very trained professional people actually working in the cafeteria, and they usually have a dietitian actually planning out the meals so that we make sure we're offering the kids all that it takes for our meals to be reimbursable. And the USDA has so many rules. So I
Yes.
can't even offer kids more than half of their fruit or vegetables in the form of juice. So sometimes what you see online is a plate of how an individual child chose to make their plate.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean they didn't have a lot of other options that they could have selected.
Yeah.
I never put French fries on the menu as the lone vegetable. Like we have to put a variety of vegetables on the menu.
Hmm.
They've broken them down into subgroups. So we have a starchy vegetable a week. You have red orange vegetables. So that's tomatoes, carrots, sweet potatoes. You have, again, with the starchy vegetables, it could be corn, but you also have to make sure you put dark leafy greens. So
Hmm.
I do a lot of kale and collards because of where we are. The kids like collard greens a
Hmm.
lot, or turnip greens. I mean, it's not the stuff that you see online by and large. So
Yeah.
those horrible plates, sometimes I will see a kid go by and they technically have put together a reimbursable meal, but the vegetable they chose was just the fries.
Yeah.
And they chose, all they have to do is have at least half a cup of fruit or vegetable. So they, of course, are welcome to do more than that. But some kids will only get the one.
Hmm.
And another thing that came with these regulatory changes, we don't have to give all kids an option to decline things. But when it comes to high school at lunch, you have to give them the option to decline. They don't have to get everything. It's supposed to reduce waste. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, when you give people a sense of autonomy, they're more likely to take ownership of what they're doing, and it could lead to more permanent change. You
Yeah.
don't have to like the vegetables that I like. You can wait until what you want comes up on the menu. And if what we're offering this day doesn't appeal to you, then fine. If you must only get the apple, fine. Today you can. And there's research to support that that's better for the kids over the long term, to give them that choice and that autonomy. But anyway, with that, sometimes we end up with trays that look really bad because that's what they wanted. If you
Yeah.
train your child to enjoy the healthful foods that you want them to eat, then your kid's tray wouldn't look like that. But I'm
Mhm.
not going to tell your child to go back and get things that they don't want, that they want to put in the trash, especially if the plate that they took was technically okay according to the rules. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not the food police.
Well, and I know from just learning about it, as well as time spent in the food system, school food system, that a lot of the kids, since their families are not necessarily eating a lot of vegetables at home either, this might be the only time they're getting introduced to them. So if they're taking it, even if they've never seen it before, even if they're not excited about it, maybe they take a bite of it today and maybe they don't like it, but then they see it come up again, or they see it in a different form, and then they're starting to get used to it in ways that they wouldn't have if they were only eating food from home.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting to me, a lot of times the people that are the most vocal about maybe not trust the healthfulness of the meals, when you ask them, well, what would you like to see?
Hmm.
Some of the requests, I'm just like, you are so detached from
Yeah.
reality right now. Let's remember that money doesn't grow on trees.
Hmm.
And especially like my district is a fairly low income district percentage wise.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of kids that don't need free lunch, but then there are a lot of children that do. Now, if you look at those kids and you're saying, okay, my kid has money, I give them lunch money, this kid can do whatever they want. Who says that your child's taste in any way connects to the taste of all these other low income children that live in food deserts,
Hmm.
that rarely have access to fresh food? I do a lot of taste tests. So I'll go to the Head Start, or I'll go to some of the elementary schools and encourage the kids to try. Maybe sometimes we'll get like local produce in, so local
Hmm.
cucumbers or something.
Yeah.
And I'll ask them for feedback. Usually, if they're used to seeing you, they'll try stuff for you just because you asked them to. And one of the complaints I got from a kid about the celery and the lettuce was that it tasted like water. That's how unfamiliar she is with what a leafy green might taste like, or what a water rich vegetable tastes like. Yeah, yeah, it does taste like water. It's literally full of
Mostly
water.
water. Yeah.
So, do you think that we don't offer that kid more kale salad because they're just dying to have it? Like, we're just restricting it for no reason. You have to think, we purchase the produce, we put it out there for people to try. It doesn't last that long. It's not shelf stable, right? So when they don't, that's literally money that we have to throw away. Whereas if we purchase frozen vegetables,
Hmm.
we can, you batch cook, you put it out there, they can try it. If they don't like it, the waste is minimal.
Yeah.
You can't make tiny purchases of produce for large numbers of children.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why people may lean more toward food that's a little more shelf stable. It's still whole food,
Hmm.
and it is this very, you have to remember, when you look at any health messaging, who stands to benefit from the message that you're hearing.
Yes.
Now, who is out there really advocating for broccoli? Who's out there who has the money to really advertise broccoli? Like, that's pretty much not really a thing.
Yeah.
So all the positive messaging you're hearing about this packaged food with unsubstantiated health claims on it, or health insinuations, because I know there are a lot of rules about health
Yeah.
claims, like what can you really put in your package. But even the fact that those rules have to exist, which not every consumer realizes,
Hmm.
that the government had to step in to protect the consumer from all these products making health claims. I saw a couple of months ago an apple labeled gluten free.
Yeah, right. And water. Yeah, water bottles labeled gluten-free.
Oh my goodness. Like
And unless you have celiac disease or a wheat allergy, gluten is not evil.
yes, thank you. And guess what? Apples were always gluten free.
Yeah.
And I can say, even if they put the sticker on there, if it has contact with some gluten in transport, it's not gluten free anymore. So if you really did have celiac disease, don't let the label fool you. You got to
Oh,
be skeptical.
don't certain adhesives have gluten?
Yes.
So maybe the
If you
sticker.
actually have it,
Mm.
oh my goodness, can you imagine? I would love to know if that individual sticker was not gluten free.
I think
So
it's
they
more
didn't
like
say
the
the sticker
stamps
was
that you
gluten free.
lick, but
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean that would be pretty funny.
Well, then they would say, we didn't say the sticker was gluten free. We said the apple was gluten free.
Don't eat this part.
Yeah, yeah. Don't eat the sticker. It's just so interesting. People have got to be more skeptical and understand that just because you're not hearing positive messaging about something, it could be because they don't have the marketing dollars or they
Yes.
don't have the time to get out there and tell you the truth. So if you really want to know what's going on in your school system, you should just go visit. Like you can call. I had a parent. I don't know where they came from. Just the secretary told me there was a parent with some questions. They're in their workout clothes. I don't know. I just had them back to my office and we talked about all the things they had concerns about. It doesn't take a lot to get to us.
Yeah.
Literally all you have to do is drop by. So you can drop in and see what is in the cafeteria. They have wellness committees and their rules about the wellness program within school nutrition, like including stakeholders from the community. So
Mm-hmm.
if there is something going on in your particular district that you're not cool with, you can be part of the solution. And I know not everybody has time for that. That's kind of a privilege too. Like if you're in
Mm-hmm.
a household where both parents work full time, maybe you can't do all that. But I mean, you could call and see how you can make your voice heard, even though you're going to be busy during the business day. Like
Yeah.
maybe you can meet afterwards. Maybe you can do a Zoom call. Maybe you can talk on Skype. Like there are ways to get involved.
Okay, so here's another question that comes up a lot, and I'd love your take on it. So, milk with the school lunches. So, not only dairy milk, which a lot of people are increasingly afraid of for who knows why, but chocolate milk always being demonized. What do you say when parents come up to you with those questions?
Well, I would say that we're required to have access to water
Hmm.
during all food service periods. So the water is not part of the reimbursable meal. So we don't
Yeah.
like push to water, but we have to have the water available.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about milk, tell your child not to drink it.
Mhm.
If you actually have a food allergy, like we are legally required because of how we define disability in this country as anything that affects a major function in
Mhm.
life, which digestion is a major life
Yeah,
function.
absolutely.
Lactose intolerance could be seen as a disability in the context of a school lunch program. Like your kid's supposed to have equal access to the program that everybody else has. If they're going to get diarrhea, that is going to cramp their style during the
Yeah.
school day. In our district, because we have such a high population of lactose intolerant people, we put lactose free milk out every single day.
Cool.
Just may as well go ahead, even though I'm lactose intolerant too, and I always drank milk, but it was the 80s. Nobody
Yeah.
cared. But now people are doing a lot better job of trying to make our kids not just safe, but comfortable eating with us during the day. So if it's just a dietary preference, even you can communicate that and see if there are any other options available. Like the parent who came to talk to me, they basically wanted their preschooler to have access to the flavored milk because their preschooler says the other milk makes their stomach hurt. And
Mm.
parents know that sometimes a kid will say that and it doesn't mean they have a sensitivity. It
Yeah.
means they don't want it so much. The thought of it makes their stomach hurt. I know I used to vomit when I really didn't want to do something. Toddlers are
Yeah.
constantly vomiting. It doesn't necessarily mean
Okay.
there's a bigger issue. But we don't require you to prove that there's a problem.
Yeah.
You just fill out a form and anyone who's licensed in the state to sign prescriptions. If you say there's a problem, good enough. we will get them a substitute. So we
Mhm.
have plenty of kids that, because of food allergies, are getting soy milk or are getting something else, or just aren't getting that part of the food pattern offered to
Mhm.
them. And for the older kids that have offer versus serve, well, they don't have to get anything that they don't want. Like, your reimbursable meal could be green beans, chicken, and um, a fruit or something. Like,
Mhm.
it depends. If you've gotten two food groups and at least have a cup of fruit or vegetable, that's a reimbursable plate.
Okay.
Depending on your school district, some school districts aren't giving all those choices at every meal. And nobody's giving those choices to preschoolers right now. So the idea with preschoolers is to get all those healthy foods on their plate,
So they'll try
and
something.
so they'll try something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the bigger kids,
They have
we're trying to
preferences.
let them have that autonomy.
Okay.
But say your kid doesn't have to have the milk if they don't want it. And I would say with the chocolate, really look at the actual nutrients on the back of the two cartons. Like,
Mhm.
if you went
So
by and
similar.
said, yeah, they're so similar. The difference is negligible. I would say where I do believe that added sugar makes a huge difference is when you're drinking liquids that are not at all nutrient dense, like a soda,
Mhm.
and that's mostly sugar and water. That's where it can really make a difference in, how
Mhm.
much it changes a lot of things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't believe in demonizing any particular food, but if you want to worry about concentrated sweets, chocolate milk is not the
Yeah,
enemy.
exactly.
Like,
I just
look
had
at
chocolate milk yesterday. It just sounded good. I was
there are
in
people
Trader
who
Joe's and
drink.
I'm like, "Yes, I want chocolate milk right now."
Yeah, there are people who deliberately do that after they work out. Like,
Mhm.
that could be used to recoup from a hard workout.
Yeah.
And then there are lots of people who are very health and fitness oriented that purchase whey and put it into shakes, but
Yeah.
then sometimes those same people are afraid of milk. That doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
So that brings up a good point. So this might be where it's a little more cultural too. So I'm in Central Coast of California and nothing sells faster in the coffee shops than almond milk, oat milk now, coconut milk. Like no one will drink normal milk anymore. And like the like hippie coffee shops I go to, like I normally like a good non-fat milk in my coffee. 1% if they don't have that. But it's like now it's like they have almond milk, oat milk, and whole milk. And those are your only options.
Oh,
And it's so strange to me because like it has gotten so niche in this area. I'm curious about like the high schools here if the students are requesting like almond milk because that is like so big in our area right
hmm.
now because I know like all okay so I work with eating disorders so a lot of my college student with eating disorders are like literally only doing almond milk if they're going to do a milk because it's so low calorie.
Oh,
And I think
gotcha.
that's the main thing. Like, they're all getting the almond breeze 30 calories a cup stuff. No one's
Mm.
getting the, other stuff. But um, I'm curious if like that ever, like if it's, whether it's the high schoolers or the parents or, people who are not wanting them to have the milk for not the right reasons.
I think I've had maybe one or two
Okay.
parents ask about almond milk, but the child really did have a food allergy
Yeah.
and didn't like soy. And it's not uncommon for somebody with a dairy allergy to also have a soy
Yeah.
allergy. When it comes to you have a diagnosis, you can
Of course.
completely deviate from the food pattern if that's what the doctor is recommending. But when it comes to us being able to swap out milk for something else, it has to be something that the USDA classifies as an equivalent. And
Hmm.
they went really deep with the details. They're like, it has to have this many milligrams of this nutrient and that. And they have the whole list. They're like, this much
Hmm.
zinc, this much phosphorus, this much magnesium. So the
Yeah.
only thing that I've seen that fills that all those requirements is usually going to be soy milk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like right now, even with the WIC program, they aren't, because the funding is coming kind of from the same section of the USDA. And then there are a lot of people too who will say, and we want to be critical thinkers. So I'm definitely not saying there's nothing to this. They'll say, well, who funds the program? That's what you're going to see out there. You know, we are getting a lot of support from dairy farming, essentially. And I did say that in the beginning, the program started to reduce like undernutrition or malnutrition in children in this country, but it also started to support our farmers. And that means animal products, and that's going to include dairy. So I guess you have to think for yourself as well. Do I want to participate in this program if that's something that bothers you? And that's more of a California thing. We constantly are saying that California is another country. We've said that like 3 times this week.
I'm not from here, so I can say that from an outsider's perspective too. It is weird.
You feel like you've left the country. Well, it's funny because down south, I would say more than anything, we've been working with the Humane Society has a branch that's called Forward Food, and they work on helping large food service operations introduce a more plant-forward menu. But of course, I mean, it's still the Humane Society. You know what they wish you would eat, but they're also very rational. And so like they work with hospitals to get more plants on the menu. But down south, the issue is if you come right out and say it's vegan, nobody wants it.
And nothing sells faster in California.
You have to say like, because last year I put out a Southern Bowl. I'm like, this is going to sell. Because I have like a handful of vegetarians and a handful of people who have religious restrictions that really makes them into vegetarianism and veganism, because that's easier for them than worrying about like, what did this touch him, all that. So those kids have been asking for more variety. We have vegetarian items on the menu every day. The vegans are like, why don't you just skip to vegan? I totally agree. Let's do that, right? I couldn't get people to pick the stuff up. I did a fantastic Southern bowl with brown rice and black-eyed peas, and I had cornbread with no animal products in it. And like at the most, a manager would sell, let's say they serve 900 kids, we'd sell 5. And they're like, and I'm counting them when you came and got Dalia. So it's like, we have an opposite issue. And it's so funny because most of the kids who want it, it's not because they're super interested in the health aspect. It's more to do with religious dietary restrictions.
And that makes sense. Out here, it's all health and not necessarily actual health, but like they've been gooped kind of thing. Like kale and almond milk and chia seeds and vegan, like that's what sells out here. It's crazy.
And that would be so much easier for me, like as a dietitian, because that was another one of the things. That's why I went to a seminar recently that Forward Food put on, because I'm like, if I could just get these other kids to eat it, then that's going to solve so many of my special diet issues, because I try not to blow up my inventory with all the different diets. Like I would like to have multiple groups of people helped or served by one menu. And I'm like, okay, if I could get the eggs out and the dairy out, like a lot of those top 8 allergens, I'm like, easy peasy, that's going to be a lot of the problem solved. But if nobody will eat it, then I may as well do like a tiny little portion for the 5 kids at that school or the 2 kids at this school that can't have eggs or whatever, But ideally, I'm going to do taste tests later on this year that are going to be 100% plant-based and see if I can get them to agree to something.
What's in it.
Exactly. I'm thinking maybe if I could get some of the kids to help with the naming, that maybe they can come. Like I even did
the ownership.
Yeah, I did like a vegan burrito and the breakfast burrito, and I just called it like a sunshine burrito. I didn't want to come right out and admit there was no meat in it or egg. But yeah, a lot of them, They're not going for it. So it's interesting to me to hear people, a lot of the news coverage, I think, is coming from other parts of the country
Yeah.
saying the food is just not healthy enough. When what I constantly hear inside this state and from people from surrounding states is, oh, Obama changed the menu so much, our kids don't want it anymore. Because people really
Hmm.
got upset when we had to do whole grain biscuits. Nobody wants a whole grain biscuit.
Yeah,
Nobody.
that's true.
Nobody. Maybe somebody who didn't grow up eating biscuits,
Yeah.
but if you grew up eating biscuits, you don't want a
Doesn't
whole
taste
grain
like
biscuit.
mom's. Yeah.
No. And I absolutely prefer like whole grain pasta and things that I wouldn't consider to be like food that came from my youth.
Yeah.
You don't have the same type of attachment to things being a certain way if you didn't eat them growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any special rules about whole grain pasta in my head,
Yeah.
but I understand why grits should always be fluffy and white. Like I'm not gonna eat any. No, like the coarse grained. You have to think too about food culture and
Mm-hmm.
accept that there needs to be room for inclusion in the pursuit of health. Number one, health is not an obligation.
Yeah.
But I believe that health should be accessible to everyone because it really can support you living your best life. And if it's important to you, people shouldn't put all these rules on how to pursue it that kind of erase your identity. So even though my mom is from outside the United States and she had a Cuban parent and Jamaican parent, and we have a lot of Afro Cuban or Afro Caribbean food culture going on,
Mm.
we also were raised in the South. So if you tell me like there's some amazing diet that's going to make me you moralize it number one and then you say you can't eat grits and you can't have rice, well just get out of my face.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even going to consider it now. You're first of all, I know plenty of people who come from the same food culture as me who live to be over 100, but you expect me to believe that grits are evil and
Mhm.
rice is evil? That doesn't add up with my personal experience.
Yeah.
When you're counseling someone, you have to include what they know to be true, what they have lived. Science is important, absolutely. Is what you're saying even evidence based, or is what you're saying a mix of evidence and your own cultural biases?
Yes.
So grits can't be bad. It's not
Yeah.
possible.
So is there anything you would like to say in closing out this video that you would like our viewers to know?
I would say that health is accessible to you no matter what size you're at. And if you are in a smaller body and you're suffering from fat phobia, that you're starting to realize is stopping you from really living your best life, and you're losing a lot of time to body hatred, basically, and
Mhm.
obsessing over food. There's a lot of help out there for you. Don't beat yourself up, but you got to question everything and just really watch what you allow in. You know, you've got to put up some filters. If someone is feeding you or your children health messaging that you can tell is mixed with diet culture, you got to set a boundary. Even if that's coming from
Mhm.
someone who is a health professional, understand diet culture is everywhere. A lot of us have been compromised.
Mhm.
But it is okay to set a boundary for you. It is okay to set a boundary for your children.
Awesome. That's so good. Well, Dalia, thank you so much for chatting with me today about school nutrition. I hope everyone will go and follow her, check out her website, her Instagram, her LinkedIn. All of that's going to be linked in the comments below. So check that out, or the description below the video. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.